Welcome to the shop. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's video we're going to be continuing my retro monster mask series, making the classic witch. Now, she's made completely out of my HD foam, which you of course can find over at Blick Art Materials, and even though her design and color scheme are based on the vintage masks of old, she goes right in line with all of the other classic monsters that I currently have up on my channel. So I want to show you guys the steps that it takes to put the witch together. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing to do is head on over to my site, download the template so you can build right along with me. The witch's head template was traced onto some 6mm HD foam with a pencil and loosely cut out. Her lower jaw template was also traced onto the foam and cut out with a utility knife. I used a small scalpel blade to cut out her eyes and then transferred and cut out her nose. Now I have all the main pieces that make up the witch mask. I grabbed all the templates that need to be cut out of the 2mm HD foam. I placed and traced around all the templates that I'm going to need for this mask, making sure to keep my waste down to a minimum. Using a combination of utility blade and shears, I cut out all the individual pieces that I'm going to need for this mask. Now it's time to clean up my 6mm pieces, and to do that I'm going to use a small medium grit sanding drum attached to my Dremel rotary tool. This drum is used to refine the eyes and clean up all the shapes. I then switch over to a smooth sanding drum for my final pass. A light heat treatment is applied to all these pieces, and now I can start assembling this mask. The first thing I do is round the mask by hand, and then I cut a strip of 2mm HD foam that will be glued to the inside to help the mask retain a curve. After the strip has been completely glued down, I can now attach the lower jaw. I start by lightly marking exactly where my glue needs to go. In this case, I'm using Bob Smith super glue to attach this piece. Once one side had been attached, the same thing was done to the opposite side. The witch's eye bags are also lightly marked onto the face of the mask, and once again super glue is used to attach these 2mm details. The same process was also done for her eyelids. But if you'd like to change the expression of your witch's face, feel free to move these around. But in my case, I'd like my witch to have a menacing glare. Next up, I lightly draw around her nose and also glue this facial detail into place. Her lower lip is also applied in the same manner, just making sure that it lines up with her mouth. Her eyebrows are also traced around. Notice how they slightly overlap the eyelids. This is another facial detail that you could swap out to change your witch's expression. With my evil eyebrows in place, this mask is starting to come together. Next up are the witch's teeth. Now, I didn't have a template for these, I just cut some small shapes out of 2mm HD foam with shears. Also, I didn't have a placement for these thought out. I just kind of glued them in haphazardly, making sure to give her an evil grin. And what's a classic witch without a wart on her nose? This was also cut out of some 2mm HD foam. Her hair pieces were lined up with the top of the mask and traced around with a pencil. This was glued down at one end, and then I worked my way across the top. For the hair on the sides of her face, you'll notice that there's a notch right here. This notch lines up with the top of her cheekbone. These two pieces will be glued to the front of the mask, while the piece below will be glued to the back. This piece is lightly marked onto the mask, and adhesive is applied to the top. After this top section has been glued to the mask, I can then glue the lower section to the back. And here I'm going to show you this process one more time, but on the opposite side. This is a really simple but effective way to make this stylized hair look as though it's really integrated into the mask. Now what's a witch without a hat? And now that the main part of this face is complete, I can start scaling up the size of the hat that I'd like. This is quickly sketched onto some Bristol board and cut out just to make sure the size is correct. Once I determine the size is all good, this template is then transferred onto some 6mm HD foam and cut out. To make the ribbon for the hat, the same process is repeated, but then transferred onto some 2mm HD foam. Then, all this witch hat needs is a buckle. The buckle is also cut out of 2mm HD foam and everything is lined up and it looks great. All the different pieces for the hat can now be glued together. The ribbon is adhered first and the buckle is glued right on top. Once the glue had cured, the entire hat can then be lined up with the mask. I lightly mark on the back exactly where the glue needs to go, then the hat can be adhered to the face. And here I have my fully assembled retro style witch mask. Now I can move on to paint, and the first step is to apply the FX brand clear primer to the entire surface. This is applied directly out of the jar with a 1-inch flat brush and then dried with a hairdryer. For the witch's skin, I'm going to be using a combination of Goblin Green and Fool's Gold. This skin color is a tribute to the vintage witch mask from years ago. This mixture is painted all over her face. I'm not really too worried about getting it onto her hair or the hat because those colors are pretty opaque. I also make sure to paint the inside of her eyes and mouth and along the outside edge of the mask. Now I'm going to add the FX color smashing to the mixture I already created. This will be the darker skin color that I'm going to use for her eye bags and lower lip. A hairdryer is once again used to speed up the drying process, and now I can move on to facial details like her wart. Like the mummy mask that I made, the cracking along the upper lip is done with a liner brush. This same brush is also used to give her some wrinkle details around her eyebrows and lower jaw. I used the skin color that's still left on my palette to help clean up some of these lines. To paint the witch's hair, I'm going to be using a combination of the colors Bloodline and Orbital Orange. This mixture was applied with a small filbert brush, and these colors are pretty opaque. Because of that, I'm being very careful not to get this color on the skin. Once the main sections of her hair and eyebrows have been filled in, I move to a smaller filbert brush for the hair at the top of her head. And then an even smaller detail brush to paint the sides of the 2mm foam. FX brand Carbon is going to be used for the witch's hat. This paint is applied directly out of the bottle with a filbert brush, and as you can see, it covers pretty well. FX brand Smashing is used right out of the bottle to paint the ribbon on the witch's hat. Again, this is an homage to the old vintage mask, but feel free to paint your witch whatever colors you'd like. For our last painting step, I'm going to be using the FX brand Blizzard to paint the buckle on her hat. This color is also used for the witch's teeth. Now, Blizzard is pretty thin, so 2 coats were definitely needed. I cut some small squares of black chiffon fabric. This will be used to cover the eyes and the mouth. I use a low-temp Surebond hot glue gun to put a small bead of glue in the corner. This low-temp glue allows me to press the fabric onto the back of the mask with my hands. Do not do this if you do not have a low-temp hot glue gun. I slowly work around the eyes, pressing the fabric into place. Any additional material will be trimmed away later on. This same gluing process was also done for the witch's mouth. Once the hot glue was cooled, I trim away any excess material with some scissors and then add a little more hot glue around the exterior of these pieces. To make a strap for the mask, I'm going to be using some 1-inch nylon elastic cut to a length of 12 inches. This elastic is hot glued slightly above the eye on the back of the mask. Additional hot glue is added to secure it, and the same process is done to the opposite side. For comfort, a small bit of upholstery foam is hot glued above the eyes, and now this mask is ready to wear. So you guys can see the basic steps that I took to put together my templates to make the classic witch. Now remember, my templates for all these retro masks are completely free and available over on my website, sksprops.com. And if you guys are building any of my builds or using HD foam, be sure to tag me at sksprops on Twitter and Instagram because I want to see your creation. Now if you guys are enjoying all this Halloween content, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and until next time, build your best with the best. HD foam.